What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the sound of one fist punching? What is the sound of the IronCast? Welcome. I am your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny, rich, enlightened friend.
Hey, it's Mozz.
Mozz, thank you so much for joining us once again for Season 1, Episode 6, Immortal Emerges from Cave. That's weird that they dropped the articles in that, so it should be The Immortal Emerges from the Cave. I don't know why they dropped that. Now, in Russian, I know there are no definite or indefinite articles. I don't know if that's true for Chinese or Japanese, but somehow I think that they're trying to sound foreign without actually knowing what they're saying. Okay.
Exactly. And I think that hits the nail on the head, really, about the show is like, there's no theory behind it. It's just, hey, I bet that sounds kind of foreign and like it would be in a martial arts film.
Yes. Well, Danny receives an invitation like no other. It's to Chuck E. Cheese, I hope. Colleen and Claire face a difficult choice. A worried Joy confronts her brother. Directed by RZA, RZA. He's one of the, what's that group?
Wu-Tang?
Yeah, Wu-Tang with Old Dirty Bastard. Yeah, okay. I actually...
So, I'm... Go ahead.
Well, see, actually, that informs and confirms things that I've thought about this. I can understand why RZA might be the director here, and so I get where he's going with. Anyway, this episode created by Scott Buck, written by Dwayne Worrell, who is, of course, as always, our staff writer. So happy to see that. Gil Kane has a based on the Marvel Comics by Gil Kane. So Gil Kane informed this. Although that's kind of interesting because I have made mention that, Gil Kane, of course, is most famous as the creator of Batman, or one of the forces on the creation of Batman. It's nice to get that golden age that I've always referenced, golden age quality to the Danny Rand thing confirmed there that Gil Kane was a part of him. So tonight's episode. Do you recall what the first opening was for this?
I think the Russian guys are butchering a piece of meat when they get their invitation to the Kumite.
Oh, yes. So we open up with the two twins who move in unison.
Yeah, and one of them kind of looked like Victor Zsasz from Gotham, didn't he?
No. Victor Zsasz on Gotham is much skinnier. I've never really felt intimidated by Zsasz. He reminded me way too much of Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show to be intimidating. Which is why I always call him Zazzles.
That's funny.
Because he seems like a guy who's straight out of musical theater about to cut you with a knife,
Yeah.
A
lot of that show is very, very musical theater.
Don't, I love Gotham. Don't take
my critique
as a negative towards it. It's very theatrical, but Gotham is a very theatrical place, as Babs said, as Stabby Babs said. This is Gotham. We all got flair. There's something in the water there, man, and Batman got a double dose. That's what we're going to say about Gotham. He acts all serious, but he clearly got a double dose. But we're not gonna step on
dwell on
Batman
that.
tonight. He's making more money than this show is. But see, I actually now I know we're gonna have a bit of a disagreement on this. I actually liked some of the conceits of this episode, and you much less so, which are all centered around the essentially.
Well,
yes.
sorry, go ahead. I thought the production quality was what was lacking. I mean, the opening was really cool. The way all these assassins got their invitations was really cool. Specifically, that Asian guy who killed a room full of gangsters and scared the hell out of the proprietor of the place. And but when you get to the end and they have these fight scenes, it seemed really rushed, really poorly done, and really cheaply done.
Well,
That bothered.
yeah, I guess maybe with him specifically. I think when we get to the fight, I thought the twins were kind of interesting, especially because with the twins it does hold to rules, which becomes central in our argument at the end of the episode. I thought the Spider Lady was super theatrical, and of course, is a great cross-reference to to Marvel Comics in general and the Spider Obsession. And him, but see, like that's the thing for him, he was kind of so blank. I didn't get what his shtick was. You know, it's like this. We have two brothers who move in unison. They are the two men made one. They are the bi-beast, if you will, you know? And then you have this Spider Lady who is a mistress of toxins, and that is kind of interesting in its own take and its own way. But the karaoke guy, I kill people and I sing karaoke. It's like, okay. And then he didn't even sing karaoke in the final scene. It's like if he was like, hey, I'm singing karaoke as I kill you, that might have been like, oh, okay, that's your shtick. But as it was like, hey, I'm going to kill you because I didn't buy him as the boss battle, is basically what it is. He did not have a strong enough shtick to be the boss battle.
Yeah. Yeah. None of them really qualified for that, though.
Well, I mean, here's what I'll say. I would say the Spider Lady, for her subtlety, is a strong endorsement for the boss battle. I'd say the twins, because they have some kind of weird psychic connection, makes for a fun boss battle. And honestly, for a boss battle, it makes more sense to have the 2-on-1 be after the 1-on-1.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
honestly, if I'm going to make a weird little sideways argument here, I think that they're sitting there going, oh, goodness, did we make the Russians the boss battle? And realize, oh, we made the white guys the karate boss battle after he kills two Asians. We've got to fix this. We've got to fix this, you know, because we're already getting enough of this, you know. But honestly, I think this... You know, sometimes I think this series steps on its own tail a lot.
Yes.
You know?
So much so that I'm wondering if the people who made Suicide Squad had anything to do with this.
Would not surprise me. Would not surprise me. You know, it's this thing with the you know, look, here's the truth of it. And I can see how when they're sitting there creating their story and they want to make their story to be more complex and deeper and more impressive in its own way, they say, you know what? Let's not make the hand racially uniform. And that, I think, because we get this again in the next episode with this idea that the hand is not racially uniform. It's the hand... It has its origins in this ninja clan, but quite frankly, they've got tentacles everywhere. They've got people everywhere. They're building something everywhere. And so they're going to send other guys who are not necessarily what you're expecting. And that makes more sense because if you're a racist criminal gang, you inform people about who to expect. But if you aren't racist, if you have just a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, then maybe you're much more threatening and more infiltrated. You know, but I think that kind of, again, like I said, steps on its own tail. Because I think had they had the Russian brothers be the boss battle, which would have made a lot more sense. But then again, I think that there's also here's what I'm going to say about this show, and then I'm going to always go back to this. I think they did not get the budget it needed. I think this show was left scrambling to make an Iron Fist show you know what? Here's what I'm going to tell you was the exact problem that occurred. I think this is the grand unified theory of the Netflix universe. Someone at Netflix decided to make a Punisher series.
Right.
And that the Marvel budgets now had to be cut up. And they were already looking at the Iron Fist series. And now because they weren't originally planning on making a Punisher series, but Punisher got so much good. Honestly, and I'm going to tell you why this is like the worst mistake they could have made right now. Punisher has never had an ongoing series that really worked. He's a super Punisher and Venom are basically two characters from the same cloth. They're real popular as characters, but they're no Wolverine. You can't put them in their own story and let them do their own tale because they don't have what Wolverine has, which is an interesting character. Venom is motivated by, for what it's worth, the Punisher is motivated by revenge. Venom, to a large extent, is motivated by revenge. They're both characters that are weak when you try to stretch that out over, 12 issues, let alone 24, 36, 48, to actually have it be a real viable comic book concept. And but what happens is everyone says, "Oh, we love the Punisher. We love this. We love this. We want to see it. When's the Punisher film coming out? The Punisher TV series coming out?" Completely forgetting that no Punisher film has ever done well at the box office. Forgetting that no Punisher comic book series has ever been really successful. And
I think you'll be surprised with what they're gonna work on with the Punisher, because I think if it's the same people that are working on Daredevil, obviously, one could somehow make a similar argument about how Daredevil didn't work on film. They shouldn't do it. It's a hard character to get people behind. But man, they pulled it off because they had a really good actor and some really good fight choreography.
Yeah, except that Daredevil has run for 40 years in a continuous series. Right.
I'm saying books. A similar argument, not the exact argument against it.
But what I'm saying is that this is the problem with the argument. Is that because here's what I'm going to say: the Punisher is a popular character. People love the Death Head's iconography. They like the idea of the Punisher. The Punisher is, at his core, the quintessential, comic book nerd fantasy. Which is that, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just kill everybody we hated? And, who among us hasn't said, wouldn't that be great?
Having something like that also gives you an opportunity to use that just as a figurehead to tell good stories that just happen to exist in that world. So I think if they can nail that with the sort of carte blanche they have to be as violent as possible, and just thinking back to that fight scene that Punisher had in the jail cell, which was one of the most amazing things I've seen in any of these shows. If they can keep nailing that, and if Barenthal can keep keeping the character really charming and interesting, and we all still feel for him, and there's still some hope of redemption, I think they can string that along for a good bit.
And what I will say, and you know, and I hate to say this, you know, I just wrote a whole letter on the Mary Jane, basically trashing the Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat book, because, and I said I hate to say this because I love the character of Patsy Walker, Hellcat. I love Hellcat. Hellcat is one of my favorite characters. That's Trish Walker from Jessica Jones for you Netflix folks. She has such a rich and storied comic book history that I cannot wait for a Hellcat series on Netflix. And I hate to say this, but you know, here's what I'm going to say: is like if Punisher was a surprise, and if their basic idea was let's half the Iron Fist budget and give it to Punisher, what you have is essentially a character that has had several ongoing series with his budget halved, and the half of it going to another character who's not had a lot of ongoing series. You know, a character that has lasted a long time at Marvel with a character that, honestly, I mean, he's 30 years old, but that's not, 40, 50 years old, like a lot of other characters in the Marvel Universe, and it gets me worried that they fell for the T-shirt sales, which for what it's worth, Marvel loves when people fall for the T-shirt sales because Marvel gets the money in the T-shirts. Because as Krusty the Clown has told us, that is the sweetest plum. The T-shirt sales is the sweetest plum. It's nothing to make $10, $15, $20 to sell, just to put a picture on it. To say, I like this show, just to advertise more you basically, it's your entire advertising budget is you get back to you by the people who wear it. It's a brilliant idea, the idea of T-shirt sales. And Marvel gets that is all them, Yeah. They license it for pennies to a T-shirt maker, and he says, here you go, this is the licensed T-shirt. $50, and they give $40 to Marvel for that, and they keep their 10 because it only costs them 10 cents to make the shirt. So
I'm terribly excited about it.
Oh, I'm excited about it too, because that's the thing is like Netflix can do it. And maybe even the Punisher will be better suited for it than the Iron Fist was. What I'll say is I think cutting Iron Fist's budget hurt it a lot.
Yes, for sure.
Now, maybe the Punisher is a better thing that can live in that B-movie world. I don't know how much squibs are, but I wager they're less than stuntmen to punch.
You know what? That's an interesting point because he was introduced on Daredevil with that sort of budget. They can't walk backwards now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's still a better thing. Like I'm saying, for a budget, it's a lot easier to pay a stuntman to say, "Hey, can you just throw yourself backwards and fall on this mat?" Can you throw a punch, have that punch caught, have someone come up under your gut, get wire fighted up over their back, and then fall down? That's a very expensive thing for the stuntman to say. Oh, hey, can you just get shot and fall back? And it's sort of the I get the feeling we're gonna get a lot of Indiana Jones scenes where, or to be more specific, Indiana Jones with the trot scenes where. You get a guy come up going wah, and he goes boom, boom, boom. Because
right.
Because that I think that's more cost effective and honestly more true to the character. I mean, Castle, he is a trained fighter. He is a Green Beret, but he is not a ninja. He is. I mean, you can do old Rambo thing, but what his skill set is shooting people, and he always does better when he's shooting people. He's always better when he's wiring a place to explode than when he's just doing straight hand-to-hand combat. He can do it, I think he does better when he's got 6 guys because, as Andre the Giant told us, it's a very different style of fighting when you're fighting 6 guys versus fighting 1 guy.
Yeah.
But that's that. So my view for the Punisher, it's a lot more shooting and maybe even a lot more suspense.
That's, I think, what is going to be really interesting because they built a character that is deep, that does question his motives, that does struggle, and they're going to have to put him in situations that cause him to do that. And I think that's going to be really interesting and fun to watch.
And that is probably, I think that may be the entire reason why it got approved, is that the idea that we'll do a Punisher and we'll do it low budget, but we'll do it a lot more suspense, a lot more distance killing, a lot more strategic planning. I think that with this, maybe because they knew it's a martial arts hero, they had to do a lot more stunts. And I think that's where, like I said, I think that's where this one hit. I think this was the one that you couldn't cut the budget on and have the story be as good. And not for nothing, let me just say, I still like the story. I still like this series.
Yeah.
I think it's still decently written, even if it is occasionally ridiculous. But I think that because I think what it was is they knew they had to have the fights, but then they cut the budgets on the fights.
Well, I think it's, people have done more with less budget. It does speak to whoever was making decisions on this. I started off the series with the first episode really liking him as Danny Rand. But the more and more the series progresses, I find him to be just one note and sort of the one emotional place he's in throughout the whole thing. It's not that great of a choice in my opinion. And again, at the end of this, the set for it could have worked in a comic book, but I don't think that it works in a live action setting. It's like, okay, you're done with this room, let's take you over to the next room. It's like a little spa,
Yeah. And like I said, if you think about RZA and of course the Wu-Tang Clan and their love of that 70s kung fu genre, I think that what he's trying to do is give this, and again, this is this idea that I've been saying about the Iron Fist, about Danny Rand, is that he only knows fights in dojos. When he first meets Colin Wing, he says, well, I think I'm supposed to meet the master of your dojo and challenge them to a fight so that I can stay here. And she says, well, there is no master of this dojo. I run it. Which is kind of weird because it says that she's not the master of her own dojo. I don't know. But, or she could have said, I'm the master and I don't want to fight you. But that's not what they said. And that goes to another thing that we'll get into next episode about the little things that make you go, oh, why do you have to ruin things that are... This is why we can't have nice things, Netflix. This is why we can't have nice things. Of all the places to do this, this was not the place to do this. But anyway, we'll get to that next episode. This episode, I get what RZA was trying to do, and I definitely got this. It is interesting to me as an anthropological question about how each genre informs the next genre. And so you look at something like, and again, we were discussing this about B movies last week, and the way that, as we watch B movies, as I said, there's a lot of B movie tricks that are done in here. And I say this as a guy who has made a B movie. It's coming soon. I know you want this, starring Tatiana Kott. She's amazing. And Stefan Black, who is also amazing. And Jimmy Prevost, and a lot of other really great people on my Facebook page. But it's a good film. Watch it. But anyway, there's a lot of tricks you learn when you're making a B film, when you're in a B film, and when you like to watch B films that you see repeated over and over again in this series. And, that idea about old B films that were created and the cheats they used and the things they did, and then the things that got influenced by them, like video games with their boss battles. Because boss battles, of course, are something that are directly taken from B films. And when you see a boss battle, where you had to, okay, now we go to this room and we're going to fight this guy. And that's what happens in every video game. And it's something we accepted in the video game because we'd already gotten it from the B movies, because B movies are based on this idea of you go as you move up the tower to meet the next boss and the next boss and the next boss. And that is not an uncommon thing. And here we get this homage to it. And whether or not you think it works or not depends on how forgiving you are of it as a genre technique. And that's what I'll say. Because when I was watching it, I kind of enjoyed it. You know, like I said, the last guy wasn't that impressive, but then again, he gets the best scene because at the end of that, we get Madame Gao and Danny.
Yeah.
And
yeah, sorry.
No, and what I'll say is, like, if you had done that with the Spider, well, actually, you probably could have done it with the Spider-Woman. But then it would have been a much less dramatic set of a fight before that.
Yeah.
You know.
And what really bugged me was that he's supposed to be the enemy of the hand. When Madame Gao is standing right there, why can't he just, just attack her? It just seems silly to me that he wouldn't. And then especially when, she gives him the option to bow out of it or whatever, it just, and he's like, he's following her around like a little old lady, she's leading him from place to place. It seemed like really lazy storytelling,
Well, see, but a thing like that, I think we get the answer in the next episode. We get why that whole scene was important. And we get, and this is the thing, I think sometimes, it's an interesting question about a thing like Netflix. Because are these shows written to be watched individually? Are they meant to be watched 2 at a pace, 3 at a pace, 4 at a pace? Or are people expecting to binge watch, 13 hours of a show the first day? And not for nothing. Let me just say this. When I was a 20-year-old guy with no wife and no kids, and I could have just sat down on my couch on a Saturday morning and binge watched 12 hours of Iron Fist, I can't say I wouldn't have done that.
Absolutely.
And if that's the demographic...
But again, you would have been 5.
I'm sorry?
But then again, we're thinking about, when you were 5.
No, I'm talking about when I was 25. I didn't have a wife and kids when I was 25. I was a guy who spent money on going to bars to talk to women who did not go home with me. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You're more than welcome to not go home with a guy, even if he buys you a drink, because, hey, you know what? That's your choice. But if I don't go and buy you the drink, I'm never going to know if you want to go home with me. So I would do that, or I could stay at home and read comic books or watch television and things like that. And the idea that I might spend Saturday, rather than trolling the depths of the Newark club scene, instead watching Iron Fist, that would not have been anathema to me. I would have said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good way to spend Saturday, And quite frankly, if I don't work Sunday, then I can watch, Saturday morning Iron Fist and then go to the club afterwards and still get home in time to do laundry on Sunday. So, it's not an impossible dream. And if you are thinking that these things should be watched in mass, in mass, it's probably not the worst idea. Because maybe you're going to get the answers to the questions that you have in this episode and the next episode. But if you assume watching as a serial prospect, that either because of time or the trolley man you can't watch it as a binge, then it's not as good of a series. And I think the reality is that it's not as good of a series because we do judge it as a series. And, it's an interesting question with these kinds of things, whether or not, if you were watching it as a series of 2-hour movies, or if Netflix slow casted, which I think they're actually experimenting with now. The idea that you just put out one episode a week. You can binge watch it after it's all aired, but they're going to just put out one episode a week. I think they've done that with a couple series now. Certainly with their live shows like Chelsea, they do that way. And I think that there's some strength to that. But as it plays out here, essentially what happens is, we had saved the chemist. He says, "We have to protect my daughter." Then he gets invited to the fights. The fights go on. The scientist is dying. They drag him to the hospital. He gets captured by the Hand, and Danny agrees to forfeit the fight to let the chemist's daughter go.
Sabine,
yeah. And that's noble.
And we also have that really great scene with Ward getting a little desperate and coming up with a ploy to get his doctor to give him some more pills. Now, see, here's the interesting turn for me. This whole series so far, I have pretty much had no reason to like the character of Ward at all until here. And now his character starts getting a little depth. It's getting, very, very interesting. And he's slowly becoming maybe my favorite character on the show right now.
Oh, no.
This episode
Ward is a very slow burn character. And honestly, by episode 7, you're like, oh, why isn't this the Ward show?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
It's like, Ward has an interesting arc. Joy has an interesting arc. I'm even going to argue Madame Gao has an interesting arc, and not for nothing, wasn't she blind in Daredevil?
Was she?
I don't know. I got to double check that. But I'm like, I thought she was blind in Daredevil. At least sometimes she was blind. I don't know. It's the, what is it? The 7 Faces of Dr. Wu, I think it was called. There was a neat little, if you like yellow face comedy.
Oh, boy.
No, nobody likes that. But it was actually a pretty interesting film. I can't remember who the star was. I want to say it was Roddy McDowall, but I'm not 100% certain. And you have this idea of the great, the Chinese circus comes to this Midwestern town, and it's almost, you kind of feel like it's kind of the inspiration to Stephen King for Something Wicked This Way Comes, because it does have a lot of qualities that you kind of get from that, with the idea of the mysterious circus comes to town. People are forced to face their own demons as they go through the various exhibits, etc. And there's this thing with the main character, and I think it's Dr. Wu, and I want to say it was like 5,000 Faces of Dr. Wu or something like that. Faces of
Madame Gao reminds me of. Do you remember that movie with Christian Bale called The Prestige?
Yes.
Remember the old Chinese man that has a trick of the disappearing fish in the bowl, and the whole time the trick is that he wasn't really that feeble or that old, and he didn't walk that funny because his hips were hurting, but he was carrying the fishbowl in between his legs underneath his clothes to hide the fact of how he did the trick. But that's who she reminds me of. She's not feeble. She's not anything, but it's just an act that she puts on.
Yes. The film was actually The 7 Faces of Dr. Lau. It was Tony Randall who played Dr. Lau. And one of the gags in it is that he would fluctuate between the super heavy faux Chinese accent and speaking, perfect English. And at one point, someone asks him, why is it that it keeps on changing? He says, oh, it comes and goes.
Okay.
Here's what I'm going to say. If you can get past the fact that it's Tony Randall dressed up as a very stereotypical Chinese man. It's actually a fun film to watch. You know, this is this horrible reality of things, and there was actually some really good minstrel performances. If you can get back the horror of the existence of minstrel films and minstrel things, that it's like actually that was actually a pretty good song. It's like, oh, hate myself for saying it, but yeah, that's how Madame Gao is. It's, you know, it comes and it goes. It's like she will play herself feeble, and she may let people in. Maybe that's the shtick, is that maybe in Daredevil she let people think she was blind because it's
right.
Easier thing for that. And yeah, Ward slams his hand in a door to get meds. And what I love about that it's just how, like, the nurse is like, do you really think you're the first person to come in here in an Armani suit with your hand slammed in the door to get opioids? You know, it's like, dude, I get freaking, you know, homeless men with their arms chopped off trying to get opioids. And I'm like, really? Did your arm really get chopped off? You know.
Yeah, but like, he has all this money. Doesn't he know somebody that can get him pills? Because like they're in New York, right? That's where this is happening.
Well, yeah, this takes place in New York.
So
Manhattan.
Like, there's a gigantic, prescription drug epidemic here. They should be on every street corner.
Yeah, but you know, he doesn't. You know what it is, and I'm going to actually tell you. I'm going to give you the answer. He doesn't want to risk getting caught.
Ah, fair enough.
He's worried that if he goes to a guy with one pant leg rolled up on the corner, it's actually a cop. I don't even know if that's a thing. I just know that's something I was told as a kid, that, you know, one pant leg up means you're buying, pant leg down means you're selling. And I forget which one was which, but yeah, that was what I always heard, you know.
Interesting.
That was supposed to be the code. Never went beyond just the fact that someone once told me that. And I actually think it was inspired by an episode of You Can't Do That on Television, which is why I wasn't inclined to believe it even then. But Ward might be the kind of guy to believe it, so, you know, but he doesn't know. He knows that if I know the trick to find a drug dealer, then probably the cops know, and that may well be Misty Knight about to arrest me. So, you know, I can understand his perspective on why he doesn't want to dig that hole. But, yeah, so, and of course, Joy finds him, and Joy is like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Thankfully.
Yeah, well, because honestly, Joy is so a person who is not feeling any of this. You know what I mean? She is not, you know, it's like her brother is now apparently a drug addict, and Danny is an idiot. I think we can all agree Danny is an idiot. And she's kind of trying to run this company, and it is not working out.
You know what I will say? What I admire about Joy's character is her sense of duty and her sense of responsibility.
Yeah, no, Joy
to the company, despite her, you know, obvious feelings about, you know, some of the shadier things that the company does. She supports it because that's what the company needs. And the same thing applies to Ward, despite fact that he's not running it properly. She gives him that room to say, hey, you make the decisions, I'll just support you, even, you know, when it goes against what she wants to happen.
But of course,
so
that's also
I do admire that about her character.
That's also kind of the detriment of her character, because it suggests a lack of autonomy. And I think that if there's a real thing you want to, you know, here's what I'm going to tell you: the whitewashing controversy, I think, is kind of meaningless in this. I think the real problem with this show is that all of the female characters lack autonomy. All the female characters are so defined by the men they meet and the men who they defer to. And next episode, I think even like the one female character that we could say, well, she's independent. That completely falls apart next episode. So, I do understand what the critics felt was wrong here. I think there is still good here, but I do understand what the critics felt was wrong. But that's my take. Mozz, do you have any final thoughts on tonight's episode?
No, just that, if I just imagined if this episode was the last thing those critics saw, then I can understand all the hate.
Yeah.
Because, I was pretty annoyed with a lot of things during this episode as well. But episode 7 really picks it up a notch.
See, and what's funny for me is that this episode I felt ended really strong. Because, again, I don't mind the very ordered nature of the boss battles. Because to me that seemed realistic in my own sense of it. Because, again, I'm coming from that B-movie kung fu film aesthetic.
Right.
And so for me, much like Rizza, I'm sure I appreciated what he was doing. He was saying, here's my props to what came before. And so I was like, oh yeah, man, I feel you, Rizza. You and me, we're cool. Let's go smoke some harmless tobacco.
And he's the one that did Man with the Iron Fist also, right?
Did he direct that? I don't know if he directed that.
He was in that. I mean, I think he did the music for it. I don't know if he wrote it or whatnot, but I think he had a lot to do with it. And I think he did some of the music for it too.
Yeah. Well, he's done a lot of. I mean, he's done a lot of work, and that's certainly something that is something that he likes. I think that the entirety of the Wu-Tang Clan came together as basically these blurs who loved kung fu films and could string some great poetry together. And they found out that, hey, you know what? If we put on, hoodies, people will think we're thugs, and we can make a lot of money off of this. But
they actually were too, though.
Well, I don't know enough to say how many of them were actually, and how many of them. Here's the thing: there's probably a lot of nerds and thugs who hang out together. Because nerds need thugs to protect them and from bullies, and a lot of thugs like to have a nerd around to make them feel like they're not so thuggish. So the rap world is a very interesting place because it is people coming from a very in many ways, you have people who are very intelligent people, but who are because they come from abject means have to deal with the world in which they live, and either they know people who have been in dire circumstances, or they were people who've been in dire circumstances. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all crazy. All I know is that the origins of the Wu-Tang Clan stems from a love of kung fu films, and that's literally all I know about the Wu-Tang Clan. I mean, I'm sure I've listened to their music often and enjoyed it greatly, but I know that. But like, if you say, "Oh, what's the Wu-Tang?" Oh, they're those guys that like kung fu films. I like kung fu films too. I know them for their nerdery, not for their art, and that may be to my detriment. Okay. Oh, so Mozz, if people want to talk to you about how you put up with that crazy white racist guy you hang out with all the time, where can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me on they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook at Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
Very good. And, of course, you can always follow me. You can write to me in that old-fashioned email way, as they did back in Kunlun. Remember the Wi-Fi password is Shambhala. Dr. Strange reference. At superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEssser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Thank you for listening to us once again, dear students. Please walk with us upon this path forever into the sunrise next week.